Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, over the past few weeks, I think the population has looked on, the population has observed, and now the population can conclude. The warnings that I gave, the submissions that I made along the way were all meant with a great degree of empathy and sympathy. But what I have seen here today is very sad, as I've said throughout. The complete struggle for relevance by someone who calls themselves senior counsel. I thought back to myself 6 years ago how that would have gone down in a court of law. But today, Madam Speaker, is about the court of public opinion. Today is about the court of public opinion, and none other than the leader of the opposition, who is obviously in a state of absolute desperation, not only for relevance, but looking around and hoping that those around her would support her. What I heard there today would fail even in a petty civil court of law and would be struck out on a preliminary point of a it does not even meet the standard of pleadings. Nevertheless, I have come here today, and I start by thanking the members of my constituency of Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, thanking the population who, as I sat there, kept sending their messages to me, the thousands of messages that I've received of support, thanking my family, thanking those in my party, thanking my colleagues, thanking the Prime Minister. But unfortunately, we're brought here today to waste useful parliamentary time, and I say that with the greatest of respect. Because you see, when someone who leads a party and leads a whole bench, someone who is the leader of the opposition constitutionally, fails and flounders in the way that we've just witnessed, it is sad to hear the continued desperation, the lies, the deceit.
Okay, so
continued desperation and the naked attempts to mislead, not the population, because you see, the good citizens know better. Madam Speaker, I thought about it, and I realized, having listened, what the reason is. I thought about why is there so much focus, so much time, so much energy being spent on me by those who are opposed to me. And this is what it is. You see, I say this without fear of contradiction. I am in no one's pocket. I do not owe anyone anything. There is not a single financier in the world, not only Trinidad, a single contractor in the world, not only Trinidad, a single criminal in the world. There is no one that can say that Stuart Young owes them anything or that Stuart Young will do what they ask them to do. So you see, that is why, Madam Speaker, you see, Madam Speaker, that is why...
Seek your protection. The member, Minister of Lavendale Hines is threatening me across the floor. Is threatening me across the floor, madam. I see.
members, member for Superior and member for Diego Martin Northeast. Okay, so members, I realize this is the first occasion we're back here since Christmas, and we may all have a sort of vaulting energy. I would ask everyone to keep their energy under control, to remember the provisions of Standing Order 53, Standing Order 48, Standing Order 4410. And take this as my last warning to us generally as a body?
Much, Madam Speaker. You see, Madam Speaker, what I understood is when the mover of a motion comes, that person is charged with the responsibility of securing the success of the motion. That mover is charged with the responsibility of laying the foundation for the success of the motion. You can't turn around and say, well, this one will talk, that one will talk, as you read from a script. But nevertheless, every single thing I have done during my time in office for the last 6 years, I say without fear of contradiction, I have always done because I believed and continue to believe it is what has been right for Trinidad and Tobago. My job is to do all that I can within the law to protect Trinidad and Tobago. And I genuinely discharge that without fear or favor, malice or ill will. So I'll start off with the exemption system and the border control. First point, Madam Speaker. The Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago took a decision in March of last year to appoint a 3-man sub-cabinet team chaired by the Honourable Prime Minister, including the Minister of Health and the Minister of National Security, to deal with the global pandemic that is COVID. I am a part of that team. There is no decision that is made by the Minister of National Security with respect to how we deal with the COVID and with the pandemic that is still raging throughout the world that is made by me personally. And I play my part, and I take it very seriously, and I have done so from day one. What I'd like to remind, Madam Speaker, the population through you, is as I look at it, I refer to an article from the BBC, 21st of January. This is from the United Kingdom, because this is what we're facing. Those on the other side have consistently since January, since March of last year, behaved as though there is not a global pandemic and COVID is not deadly, potentially. You would recall they talked about building a dome. None other than the member for Siparia came out, build a dome. COVID will be killed in sunlight, etc. But this is what we're facing now, currently, and why border protection and border control remains a consistent pillar of how this country deals with COVID. Priti Patel says the United Kingdom should have closed the borders in March 2020. This is the Home Secretary in the United Kingdom coming out and saying that the United Kingdom should have closed its borders in March 2020 in light of the coronavirus pandemic. Trinidad and Tobago doesn't have to face what unfortunately other countries around the world, including next door, are unfortunately facing now. The article goes on to say, in a video call obtained by Guido Fawkes, the Home Secretary told Tory supporters she was an advocate of closing the borders 10 months ago. Between mid-March and June, the United Kingdom did not impose a ban or quarantine restrictions on international travelers arriving in the United Kingdom. Compare that to Trinidad and Tobago today. Last night, minutes after midnight, the airline industry was sending me messages that the United Kingdom today may very well announce everyone coming into the United Kingdom will go into a cluster of hotels for quarantine. To stand up here and with the typical dishonesty, it sickened me as I listened to the member for Siparia read a letter and say that 17 persons are being allowed to go to Guyana to come back and go home quarantine. And to create this cloud, it is because they are diplomats. But it showed, Madam Speaker, it showed that the opposition does not understand the Vienna Convention. Because you see, the Vienna Convention says when diplomats arrive in Trinidad and Tobago, the government cannot quarantine them. But what we've come up with, along with the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is that diplomats arriving in Trinidad and Tobago will be allowed to home quarantine. They present their test results before arriving here, and that is how we protect Trinidad and Tobago and the population, but respect international laws and obligations. So to listen to the attempt to mislead the population, oh, young, let 17 people go and come and they can go home. Complete dishonesty. They are diplomats.
Madam Speaker, 48.6. The reference to complete dishonesty is imputing improper motives.
You know, if members, you know, I have been on my legs for at least 3 seconds. Member for Superior, member for Diego Martin, Northeast. I think I will invite, I'm so happy to see the camaraderie between you all, but I think that I am at a stage that I'll invite the both of you all to leave the chamber, continue your camaraderie, and then return. Because this is the second time I have stood, and you all have continued as if maybe... If you can kindly sit, please. I'm standing. Could you kindly sit, please? Please continue.
Madam Speaker, very quickly, despite the interruptions, the second article I draw the population's attention to is one dated the 25th, 2 days ago. None other than the Prime Minister of Canada, and is stated in the National Post, Canadians who travel outside Canada could be stranded abroad. Trudeau warns. The government has had travel advisories warning against any non-essential travel since the beginning of the pandemic, but some Canadians have not heeded the calls. And what the Prime Minister of Canada has said, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau warned Friday, anyone travelling outside Canada could face considerable trouble getting back home, as new evidence suggests some COVID-19 variants are both more transmissible and more deadly. He is quoted as saying, no one should be taking a vacation abroad right now. If you've got one planned, cancel it. Don't book a trip for spring break, Trudeau said, outside the cottage. We could be bringing in new measures that significantly impede your ability to return to Canada at any given moment without warning. This is what is happening now. Trinidad and Tobago, whilst having closed borders, has managed the repatriation of our nationals back. And that has resulted in us being able to carry out the business of Trinidad and Tobago as we're currently doing. The next one, Arden says New Zealand won't open border to the world this year. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, right here, closer to home, Madam Speaker, the 26th, which was yesterday, Barbados today, page 3, public health official, we may have dropped the COVID ball with return to tourism. In an interview with Barbados today, the executive director of CARFA, Dr. Joy St. John, said people across the region had been lulled into a false sense of security. And she talked about tourism and opening the borders, etc. We see what is going on in Europe, what has happened in the United States. So, Madam Speaker, the border control was something that was decided by the Cabinet on the advice of medical public health experts and the scientists. And it continues. The new exemption process must evolve. I've listened incredulously over the last few days, including a few moments ago, the member by Superior, attacking an evolution of a process. Obviously, criteria will change. What was taking place in March of last year, April of last year, May of last year is vastly different from now. Our people who were stranded outside, who may have gone for a 2-week or 3-week vacation and been stranded, those were the priorities then. It must shift now. It is evolution. It is normal to criticize a form and to try and say it is a visa. It is not a visa application. The point that was made, it is a form, an online form that is similar to what every single Trinidadian must fill out if they have to go to the United States or Canada, only in terms of how the form is structured. There must be a way to manage the border system. Now, to get into what are the achievements of national security during my tenure? I was appointed on the 6th of August, 2018. Carnival 2019 and 2020 were the safest carnivals in decades. That is a fact. We were able to introduce the bottle ban that had never been done before. That is a fact. The demonetization exercise, so I thought about it. Demonetization was handled by national security. There were 3 people in the country who knew it was going to take place. National security was one of the pillars. Is it that those opposite are upset because they are part of who was stuck with 500 million cotton bills. It is now one of the most successful demonetization exercises ever done in the world. When we were studying how to do it and looking at other jurisdictions, we did not have a single hiccup in carrying that exercise out that other jurisdictions had. We appointed a commissioner of police. We appointed a chief of defense staff with sufficient years at the helm to make meaningful difference. The UNC style of national security was to grant a contractor chief of defense staff and extend it. That is UNC national security style. We appointed a qualified SSA director who is the same batch as the commissioner of police and the chief of defense staff. Qualified, carrying out his role and responsibility without fear or favor, not a telephone operator. This has brought significant benefits. We have established the National Operations Fusion Center, National Intelligence Fusion Center. There's been significant planning and sharing of intelligence and assets in national security, because you see, this Minister of National Security is not about giving out contracts. This Minister of National Security is about doing what we can with the limited resources we have and doing it without fear of anyone. We have national security has changed the way and led the charge with how we have dealt with some crises, not only in Trinidad and Tobago with the flooding, with the earthquake. National security led the charge on the direction of the cabinet to help Dominica, to help the Bahamas when they suffered significantly, seamlessly, without any interruption. Even in times of limited resources, we've completed important infrastructural projects and below cost, on time, without there being any inflation of costs. The Sherburne and Roxborough police stations, the Roxborough and Penal fire stations, we cut costs significantly in these things by using the same floor plans, not giving out a contract to somebody. The 200 motorbikes for Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we received that gratis based on the relationship we built and we nurtured with the People's Republic of China. So it was not a contract. Nobody was given a contract for the supply of those bikes. And now we've been able to provide to the fire service, the defense force, and prisons out of that. We negotiated the state-of-the-art DNA center. And I just heard the member again try to mislead, saying the Prime Minister said $100 million loan. It is not a loan. It is again going to be gratis from the People's Republic of China. I hear they come in with helicopters. Let us talk about helicopters. When the UNC came into office, they canceled the OPVs, but they kept 4 AW139 helicopters. That is more than sufficient for national security. So don't come here today and try and pin vertical leases on me. I am the one who's trying to save the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, and someone will remind the UNC of the 2 corrupt leases that they got into for those helicopters. The helicopter, I heard the member for Oropuch East talking about national security, use of the helicopter for national security. It was never conformed for national security. It was the executive limousine service from South Trinidad to Port of Spain and all over when the member for Siparia wanted to fly all over. That is UNC-style national security, right? Border control. We ordered 2 Cape-class vessels. You know how? From the government of Australia, being paid for through a fund of the government of Australia. I have here a report from the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force dated the 8th of January. The border security UNC style was a Chinese vessel and some Daman vessels on their way out of office. The Chinese vessel, we all know how that Chinese vessel was procured for border security.
There is not a substantive motion against the UNC or members on this side. This is a motion on Minister of 48-8. Standing.
Overrule.
Madam Speaker, you brought a motion, member for Siparia. You brought a motion to talk about national security. Let us talk about national security. Take the heat. This letter from the Trinidad, Madam Speaker, population of Trinidad and Tobago, this letter from the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force is now complaining about the Chinese vessel because they cannot procure parts. That is one of the things you consider when you're purchasing vessels. Is not stumbling on a jetty saying, I want one of those. So now what they have said, issues were experienced which include the delay in obtaining supplies as the supply chain required to support this capital asset was firmly embedded in the Asian market. This is of critical concern as it pertains to the major mechanical equipment such as engines, generators, gearboxes due to the following. Lack of original equipment manufacturer support hinders the sourcing. In other words, the Defense Force is saying we have a vessel that was procured and we can't get the parts now. What did we do? You want to know what we did in national security? On this side, we sent 2 officers, the Chief of Defence Staff and the highest level engineer of the Coast Guard to Australia to go and look at the Cape-class vessels. We got a report from them in writing saying that these vessels are appropriate for Trinidad and Tobago. We've negotiated to get the parts, the maintenance, etc. Because it's not about giving a contract. It's not about just acquiring so money could pass. That is not national security under me, I'm sorry. Right? We will talk about the Daman vessels that were procured with no financing in place. That is now the subject of an international criminal investigation. That is national security, UNC style, not my style.
Madam Speaker, that is absolutely not true. 48.6, please. 48.6.
Overrule.
You want to talk about border control and always talking about the Venezuelans and how porous the borders are. Well, I'm waiting to hear who declares a conflict of interest today. But what we had in 2013, under the UNC government, there was a ACP, African, Caribbean, Pacific's report on invisible migrants. Not a single recommendation out of this in 2013 was implemented by the UNC. It starts off by saying, talking about Trinidad and Tobago in 2013, this country has also experienced...
Standing order. 48.1 and 48.6. 48.8, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so I'll take them in order. Overruled on 48.8. 48.6, overruled on 48.6. 48.1, overruled on 48.1.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is why I am saddened. And the population looks on. You bring a motion here today to talk about me and national security. I am giving the population my record as Minister of National Security. You have to take it. And what it says is this country has also experienced irregular migratory flows, which include trafficked persons and smuggled migrants. In 2013, not a single thing in the recommendations implemented by the UNC. But when we found this report last year, someone blew the whistle and said, do you know that under the UNC they got this ACP report? And we pulled the report and looked at it. The Prime Minister had a whole press conference on it. We were pleased to see that even without sight of the report, the vast majority of recommendations how to deal with the migratory problems had already been implemented by us. That is how you deal with border security. There was talk about challenge to regulations. I want to tell the country today through you, Madam Speaker, without offending any sub judice rule. I saw in the newspapers over the last 3 days a certain person claiming she had put in an application. I felt sorry for her, 70-something years old, put in an application, being led, the legal team, when I received the letter, being led by a MP for the UNC. When we check the system...
48.2, Madam Speaker, 48.2, this is offense.
You prevented us from talking about the law, and now you are doing exactly by citing a matter, you're citing a bit.
Continue.
You know, this is what saddens me. Senior counsel, sub judice is a matter before the court, not a letter. And listen, but the point I want to make so that the population understands the continued dishonesty. When we search the system, do you know there was never an application by that woman in the system? There was not an application ever made, but they want to go to court on that. Regardless, I instructed that an exemption be granted. Not an application made. We checked the system twice. But that is the dishonesty of the opposition, trying to mislead the population.
Madam Speaker, standing order 48-4 and 48-6, Madam Speaker. 48-4 and 48-6.
Member for Barataria, maybe if you address me now, I might hear you.
Madam Speaker, 48-4 and 48-6.
Overrule on both. Please continue.
Don't bring to the House what you can't handle. Under me as Minister of National Security, with the support of all of my colleagues in the cabinet, because you see, I remind the population, they had 5 ministers of national security. One who is currently wanted by the US Department of Justice. That same Minister of National Security towed a truck, a fire truck. The member for Siparia want to talk about fire? Towed a fire truck for $6 million. Right? Let me tell you all about the prisons, Madam Speaker, what has gone on in the prisons. Because I asked 2 questions. I said, we are trying to achieve a lot with the prison service under my tenure. We are fixing the remand, we're upgrading the remand. Finally, this should have been done decades ago at a cost to the taxpayers of $60 million. There is a fence that is offensive, built by the UNC around the prisons that surrounds absolutely nothing, that cost the taxpayers $87 million. So I am fixing remand for $60 million. They put up a fence that protects nothing for $87 million. That is national security Siparia style. Under the member of parliament for Siparia, they took $277 million of our tax-paying dollars, $277 million in cash, and bought a warehouse called the Eastern Correctional Rehabilitation Center. If we had $277 million now, we would reform the whole of the prison service. Nevertheless, what we've done is we've upgraded the CCTV, the alarm system. We are now putting in place new fence at Golden Grove when they took $87 million for a fence surrounding nothing. Last year, and my colleagues will speak about some of it, last year, they always want to talk about homicides and what the homicide level is. I have never engaged that conversation publicly. That is not for the Minister of National Security to engage publicly. But in the year before, when the homicide rate had gone up, call for Young's head. The homicide rate last year was 396, first time in years. I hear nothing about it. Don't come here and try to tell the population about national security. Don't come here and try to mislead this population and tell the population about national security when you, the member for Siparia, told your whole team in the Senate and in the House to block the anti-gang legislation, to block the bail amendment. By blocking the bail amendment, let me remind the population, that was the UNC saying anybody with an automatic firearm or grenade, you should get bail. Whereas we were saying, no, stay inside for 120 days and you'll be charged. The border control, we implemented a successful Venezuelan migrant registration that has not been done anywhere else. We receive accolades for that. Right? The coastal radar system, working, operational, multi-agency teams on land. Madam Speaker, the list goes on. Madam Speaker, the population made its decision already. But what I found interesting is the amount of time, effort, energy, including here today, being taken to bring this type of motion and to target one member specifically. But I stand here without fear of contradiction that I have the support of my cabinet colleagues and my Prime Minister. I have the support of my constituency and the population of right-thinking people. And I, through you, Madam Speaker, continue to give my assurance that whatever portfolio I hold, I will continue to do so to the best of my ability, without fear or favor,
Ma'am,
malice or ill
Your
will.
time is now up.